The FDA has officially authorized second booster shots of the Pfizer, BioNTech, and Moderna coronavirus vaccines for people 50 years or older. An FDA spokesman said in a press release, quote, "Current evidence suggests some waning of protection over time against serious outcomes from COVID-19 in older and immunocompromised individuals. Based on an analysis of emerging data, a second booster dose could help increase protection levels for these higher-risk individuals."
The development comes as new CDC data confirms that those who received the Johnson & Johnson single-shot COVID vaccine are not as protected against hospitalizations or severe illness as are Pfizer and Moderna recipients. And now officials are recommending those individuals supplement their original regime with one, or I guess eventually two, mRNA booster shots. So I was actually listening to NPR this morning, and
speaking of state media,
speaking of state media, and it was interesting how
was the segment of, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Was the segment about racism or was it about racism?
They didn't get into racism on the
amazing, one. Incredible! You found one.
Okay. It was it was on this. Should you get the second booster? And I think both of you would have come away from the segment being like, that was extraordinarily reasonable. I think your heads might be exploding that it took them so long to get there, but they were like, well, look, we talked to a bunch of experts. If you are, if you have a comorbidity, you're over 50, then you should probably get this. It will reduce your risk of hospitalization, but you can walk, don't run. They were like, it's not a huge deal. Like, it's true that the other booster is waning, and then they also said, people have asked, what if they recently had Omicron? Like, that does give your immune system a jolt. And so if you had Omicron or you've been previously infected, you probably don't have to be in any hurry to get the jab. It was a window into a world that we could have been living in this entire time.
Well, actually, and to kind of go on that, CNN medical analyst Dr. Lena Wen actually kind of said something similar. She penned a Washington Post op-ed yesterday championing the move away from top-down public health guidance. She wrote, "The point is that while it's far from straightforward whether people need a fourth dose, there aren't those who want it, and there are those who want it and should be able to access it. The federal government's stance to allow this option signals an important pivot away from top-down public health guidance to individual decision-making. Going forward, people should be empowered to use boosters just as they do masks, tests, and treatment to manage their own risk of COVID-19. So here we are, right? I mean, this is where we're at now. Finally, as you mentioned, Ryan, we're kind of getting to that point where, okay, here's your risk. Here's what we've got for you. Manage it. Decide. What do you want to do?
Yeah, allow a wide range of things, but don't require things. Leave it to individuals who know their own health to make the best choices for them in consultation with their doctors and certainly expert guidance, but leave it to people to choose. The increasing recognition or the increasing willingness of the kind of establishment to recognize the benefit from having been infected that is giving you some level of protection it's extraordinary now. I mean, like a year ago, we couldn't even talk about that, and now they are. Now, not only can we talk about it, they're talking about it too.
Yeah,
which just shows you how this has changed.
I wonder, in hindsight, and I think it's important to talk about things in hindsight so that maybe in the future we make different decisions. But I do wonder had we not just been so, okay, everybody has to get it, if we would have had this more reasonable approach, if more people who genuinely were vulnerable and really did have severe outcomes and even deadly outcomes, if they would have been maybe more likely to have taken it, if it wasn't so politicized and it was just, okay, everybody must take it, and if you don't, then you're a crazy racist, anti-science, Trump-tard. I mean, that's kind of where it devolved into, and that was so dangerous, I think, on both sides. It was dangerous for people to believe that there was something like, oh no, if I take it, then I'm now one of them. Now I'm going to be a libtard. But it's also really dangerous for people to politicize it and say, well, if you don't, then you must be this Trump-tard, right?
Right.
I hope going forward we learn from that.
I think they lost the thread right away, and I remember getting jumped on back in like March of 2020. So I was one of the people that was very early on saying this is going to be a lot more serious than you think. But also very early on I was saying, look, this thing where you're closing down parks and taking these other extreme absurd measures is not just wrong, it's going to undermine your public health credibility when you need it in the future. And so they really blew it early by not treating people with more individualism and respect. And so that when they then had actual science behind them, they had lost a significant chunk of the population by that point.
Well,
that's my take on it.
Especially since they didn't modify after learning the science. Like here in LA, the beaches were closed for so long, even after they knew that, you had people, the experts coming out, who was it? It was Fauci and Deborah Birx, right? And they were doing their daily meetings. And they were even coming out saying, if you're outside, you're pretty safe. You're not going to, it's very, very unlikely for you to catch it. And yet still in Los Angeles, they locked down the beaches, said they roped off the parking lot. You weren't allowed to go. I mean, it was just, even when the science evolved, they didn't shift. And that, I think, was the biggest. I mean, it's understandable we don't know things in the beginning. It's understandable that we're learning, right? But as we learn, we should be then modifying. And that just didn't happen. And I think that is undermining.
And when a relaxation of those restrictions did not come when we started having the vaccines, even when they started requiring the vaccines, I didn't want them to require vaccines, but I thought they're going to require them in some of these circumstances. It's going to be so we can actually drop the rest of the stuff. And then it was very clear quickly after that no, all the other stuff is still going to be in place, which made me feel foolish for even giving them the slight sort of benefit of that. Well, if they're going to do this, they won't do the other stuff. No, it was going to be everything. It was never going to be a relaxation of these emergency pandemic powers, which makes it more important to, from my view, to just oppose the whole thing, because it was never going to be a reasonable kind of calculation or hedging.
There was that one critical moment, I thought, where it was an example, but it was also widely viewed when you had, was it January of 2021? You had all these Democrats socially distanced and wearing masks in the Capitol after they'd all been vaccinated, and I thought it would have been such a great moment for them to be able to just pack in. Be like, look, we got the vaccine. Yeah. You get the vaccine. You can do this. Instead, it's sent an opposite message that what's the point of getting the vaccine? Because then we're still going to be masked. We're still going to socially distance, when they had good science behind them. So, I think there were so many different mistakes made along the way.
Another question I've got about this darn vaccine that they've, the booster, have they modified it yet for the strains that are circulating? Or are we still jabbing people with the original strain vaccine? Is that where we're at?
They have
with
not
this?
modified it yet.
What happened to the whole, one of the great things about mRNA is that you can tweak it and get it out so fast. And around November, they said they were going to start doing it.
I know, that's why I've not been boosted. I don't regret getting the vaccine. I got the vaccine, and then I had afterward I had a Delta case that I suspect was more mild because of that I had been vaccinated. And I'm theoretically willing to get boosted, but I do have the protection of the vaccine and the prior infection. And if it's the case that, and I don't know how much that protection helps for whatever strains we're experiencing now or likely to experience, but I don't see how. But if my previous vaccination and infection doesn't do much, why would the boost of the same vaccine help that much? I'm not totally sold on that.
Well, and also, you're under 50, probably no comorbidities. Don't need to get too personal. The other interesting thing NPR said is that people over 50, 1/3 of them have comorbidities. Like 1/3 of Americans over 50 have comorbidities.
Right. Yeah. What I've read in the data is that under 50, they say that the vaccine, it's kind of, it is if you have real severe comorbidities, and you should maybe consider. And I do know somebody who was 38 and did pass from COVID, did have comorbidities. But then they said at 50, it seems to be kind of like because obviously age is a comorbidity with COVID, and 50 is that kind of, that point where it may or may not, your age may or may not, with or without comorbidities at 50. So it's kind of like the neutral zone, and then the older you get, your age is more likely to have an impact. So I thought that was interesting.
I don't mean to brag, but I've been going to the gym before we do the show. I get up at 5:30 to work out before we do this show. So I'm not worried about any comorbidities.
Excellent.
Well, but to your point, Robby, I do think that, people will be open to taking this every year, especially if it's like a flu vaccine. But again, those are modified.
Yeah, they got to actually update it. Right. They got to actually update it.
Right. And then maybe people would say, yeah, okay, I want to get that. I don't want to get the latest strain. Yeah, okay. But I don't know what they're doing.
And maybe there will be new vaccines, too, that use the old school technology that people are more comfortable with, or some people are more comfortable with, not out in LA.
Or even there's the new ones that they're coming out with that are supposed to be even more protective, the nasal spray ones that are supposed to really help neutralize.
Give me some nasal spray. Yeah, with spring starting up and allergy season coming back, I am back on my allergy nasal spray.
So you're just add one more?
Yeah, that's fine.
Then you'll get all the people who were really just afraid of needles, and the entire kind of identity around being against it was just they don't like the needle.
Don't like the needles.
I don't know. I didn't hear very many. I mean, I know people that are pretty seriously. Yeah. But I know a lot of people really afraid of needles, but they still.
They still went for it.
Yeah. But I think people had other reservations. I think more than the new technology of it.
Yeah, for sure.
And there's still a question around that. Why here in the United States do we still only have 2 types of vaccines, mRNA or the adenovector virus vaccine? Other countries have 10 different types at this point. We're still not getting them. You go down the border to Mexico and you can get several different types, including the traditional all the way to the mRNA. Still can't get that here in the United States. They still won't release Novavax. And that's a big question. A lot of people are wondering what the heck is actually going on.
Yeah, we're in no hurry to get those. Yeah, it's
crazy.
They should be pushing all of that as fast as they can through
everything.
Obviously through the safety protocols, but
what happened with AstraZeneca?
I mean, that was very similar to Johnson & Johnson, right?
Yeah,
it's still sitting in those warehouses. We shipped it out.
We donated it. We donated.
Just gave it away. We're like, we're not going to use it. We'll just give it away.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, in Europe, if Europe can use 10 different types of vaccines, why can't we here? I mean, are they less safe than we are? Same with Canada, same with Mexico. I mean, maybe Mexico, maybe people could say, well, no, I don't know.
This is a general principle that I've advocated even from before the pandemic. If something is approved by the UK, it should be de facto approved here. I have faith in British medical scientists, right? Like they're not, if it's approved there, fine, you can put a warning label on it, say only approved by the island nation of the United Kingdom. Like, okay, I think it's safe.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Or Germany even.
Yeah, sure, right, exactly. Coming up, Brianna Joy Gray will give us a preview of what's in store for midterms. Stick around.